All right, we are back on here with another episode, and today I'm here with Anne, who is a health and fitness coach. She's got a really great story. I don't say great history. I don't know about her history, but she got a really great story, and she comes from a line of military members as well, and we'll have her explain that here in just a few minutes. But Anne, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit about your story and what you do. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure to get to meet
Yeah.
more military families. And yeah, my family history, as I was saying to you before, it goes deep. I think back to my great uncle Joe. He was a World War II veteran. He actually landed on Omaha Beach during the D-Day invasion, and he was awarded a Bronze Star for rescuing over, I want to say 10, it could be a dozen. I don't know. I don't want to elaborate, but there was a good handful of soldiers that he saved from drowning. So he actually was one of the lucky soldiers who was not like D-Day plus one or two. So he was closer towards the end. But I remember, my dad telling me stories about how when he came home and, he's describing the scene, which is pure chaos. And you just see like the red in the water from just all of the lives that have perished. And for him to have come home from that was a blessing. So we were very fortunate about that. And as you get older and you get to have more conversations with your grandparents, because they're way cooler than when you were like 4 or 5.
Right.
Talking to my grandfather, he was also in the Navy and he was in the Korean War, and he was a meteorologist, believe it or not. And his story too, fascinating for different, obviously, political reasons for why we were involved in these conflicts. But I can tell you that my love for my country has always been at the forefront of my mind. And when I eventually got married, I ended up marrying a former naval officer. He was commissioned right after September 11th. So he was on the Operation Iraqi Freedom. He served from 2001 to 2006. And I don't even know all the things he did. Like, he's like, I had such military clearance. I won't be able to tell you till like I'm 111. So I'm like, you better write that down now.
Yeah.
But he did, from what I know, like he's interrogated terrorists. He was in charge of looking at radioactive material on submarines and commissioning them. And it's interesting, when we first started dating, I remember going to his apartment and he had this deck of cards on his side table. And the deck of cards had like camouflage. So I was like, oh, like, these are cool. Like, we should play with them. And then when you actually look at the cards, on the inside were the faces and the names of like known terrorists. And Chris is like, well, while we're on the ship, like, we're constantly learning and being, engrossed in who we're looking to capture. And he was funny because he's like, oh, we got this guy. We got this guy. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I've never felt more safe in my life. But in all seriousness, it's funny because I look at Chris now. He's transitioned out of more of like the military lifestyle, and he's transitioned into healthcare because he still wanted to serve. And him now in a quote unquote civilian job is interesting because I don't think the support that he could have used was there for him as a military veteran, with the skill set that was required and the intensity that you needed to have for your job and, what they're trained to do. And it's funny because when I first started dating him, I was like, hey, like, can you teach me? And he's like, and you don't want me to teach you like how to hold a gun, how to shoot a gun. Like, I was trained to kill. Right. So like my mindset's very different. But I grew such a deep appreciation for the servicemen and women, as I always have, for the depth of the sacrifice that they give on a larger country level, but even on a familial level, like just what their families have to endure as they're going overseas, and they're missing birthdays and holidays and vacations, and they're protecting people that they've never met. Right. Yeah. So can never do enough for our veterans. In terms of my career, as a teacher in a former life, I have done a lot of charitable work for veteran organizations. And I actually had a coach in my company for a while who was a military spouse, and she started as a client. She's like, Anne, I know that I take care of everyone around me. My husband is gone for months at a time, and I need to do a better job taking care of myself so I can take care of my kids.
Mm.
And so she started more of like, hey, like, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape, but I definitely could be eating better. And she had such tremendous results within the 6 months that she worked with me that she's like, Anne, I need to pay this experience forward. I need to get certified. I need to come work with you. And she did. And from there, we've worked with countless military spouses to empower them that despite crazy schedules, wherever your significant other is in the country or the world, you have this close knit group of women who are there supporting you and your journey. And then when they're home and you do get to spend time with them, like I had a military wife who went to Disney with her family. And what was really cool was she had reached her goal weight and she didn't gain any weight while she was there enjoying the like supersized pretzels
Wow,
that are
that's pretty
like the size
good.
of and like ice cream and stuff like that. And that's what it's about, is making sure everyone feels heard, feels valued, feels appreciated. And that's what I try to do in terms of giving back to that small group of people on the internet.
Wow, no, that's awesome. And there's a lot to unpack there. Not just with that, but there's a lot to unpack in health and fitness. I mean, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's
Yep.
information everywhere. And so we may actually have to break this up into multiple segments.
Okay.
But no, it's funny as you mentioned, and just to kind of backtrack a little bit, is your husband was actually in around the same time I was. I think I joined in 2001, just before everything happened, and I got out in 2007. No, 2007 active duty, and then I did 3 more
Yeah.
years in the reserve. So we were in there right around the same time. So I definitely can relate to that.
You need to have Chris on here.
Yeah,
He's
for
like
sure.
he's very reserved. Like, and maybe you find this too when you talk to military men and women. He's not one to like gloat or, be very open to talk about what he does or did, I should say.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you can get him in, I got him to speak to my students on Veterans Day
Oh,
because
nice.
we in the States, we didn't get off for Veterans Day. I'm like, Chris, like you
Yeah.
need to come in. So I made him come in and speak to my students. They're like, yo, Mrs. Svogun, your husband is incredible. And I'm like, I know. I got very
Yeah,
lucky.
yeah.
But
No.
yes, you will have to talk to Chris. End the story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely see if we can break this up into multiple segments and have you on for quite a few, and have you explain a few different things in the health and fitness industry,
Yeah.
because there's just so much there. But to kind of narrow that down, I guess a little bit, like you mentioned, spouses and dependents and all that things, like when they're deployed and they're kind of taking care of things at the house and stateside and all that. And even just everyday lives, we sometimes just tend to put our health on the back burner because we're always so busy, right? And life just seems to get busier and busier, especially for the military industry. Like what are 1 or 2 things that somebody can do to kind of incorporate this into their lifestyle without feeling like they're sacrificing too much time away from their family, that with the time that they already don't have, right? You work
Yeah.
with so many people, hundreds of people. Like, what are some, like, maybe 1 or 2 things that somebody can kind of work that into their life? They know they should be doing it, but they just haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a loaded question.
It is.
My answer to you is going to be, it depends on the person, truly. Because I feel like we all have the same 24 hours in the day, right? And especially with military members and their spouses, like they know how to work the clock well. So I would almost argue, depending on your age, depending on your goals, we should be getting, based on general guidelines and regulations, around 150 minutes of structured exercise every single week, which is roughly 30 minutes a day, which if you were to do the math is roughly 2% of your day. So if someone's like to me, I just don't have time, to me, you're really saying, it's not a priority to me right now. We can find the time. We just need to be a little bit more strategic. And that's where some of the time management strategies I have come into place. And we're looking at calendars and we're looking at things to help optimize where there might be pockets where you can take. A lot of my military moms will take their kids in strollers for walks, right? So one of the easiest things you can do if time is an issue, is start where you are with the resources you have, because we get in our own heads that we need better equipment or we need access to a gym.
Yeah.
Oh, healthy food's too expensive. And there's all of these like noise, all of these questions or complaints or excuses that impede our abilities, when in reality, we need to take ownership and we need to take action. And that action could be small, and that's what builds up over time. So if you're brand new, you know you need to do something, you don't have access to a gym, you don't have many resources at home, like just go for a walk. It's great for your cardiovascular health. It's low impact. You can take your kids with you. It's good for them too, by the way. If we look at the rising rates of obesity in our country, it is higher than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And yet we as an industry, which is crazy, spend more money than ever as consumers on the latest detox or tea or shake or supplement or diet. And it's like, we don't need any of that, right? There's this huge paradox that like, we have all these resources and all this information, and yet obesity is higher than it's ever been in our country. And so we need to look at why that's happening. And it just starts with us getting out of our own way and start taking steps in the right direction, literally by getting walking. Walking is very, very easy. Like I said, you can do it anywhere. And, you know, again, granted, you have no sort of physical limitation that's preventing you from walking. It should be accessible to the majority of people that are listening to this. Another really simple thing that you can do is just start becoming aware of your food choices. Because even if you start moving your body, 90% of my client results come from the other 23 hours in the day where they're not working out, because we're constantly being inundated or tempted with different food choices throughout the day. And what I love about our program is that there's flexible eating. So none of my military moms, including one that was stationed in South Korea, who was like, Anne, I don't have the accessibility to have blank vegetables that I would normally have here in the States. Cool. What do you have that has some vegetables in it that's going to have the vitamins and minerals that your body needs? So bringing awareness to your food choices. And I would teach our clients, what does it look like to create, and just by intuitively eating, what is a healthy plate of food? What does it look like? And why do we need certain percentages of protein, carbs, and fats on your plate in like these ratios to optimize how much energy you have, how much, I guess you can even say strength is going to be linked to that, your libido, your stress level, your hormones, your gut health. There's so many facets that we can get to, but to keep it simple, moving your body, paying attention to your food sources, chances are the majority of people listening to this, if I were to say like, hey, how much protein do you eat in a day? They're probably like, I have no idea. I've never paid attention to it. Or I don't track, or I don't want to track. Cool. You don't have to track to lose weight if that's your goal. You don't have to track if you want to optimize your body, but you should be aware of what your plate should look like. So I teach them different methods for that. And the cool thing is you're not sacrificing your favorite foods or your favorite drinks, or even when you're going out to celebrate a child's birthday, you're not sacrificing a piece of cake. We're learning how to build those decisions into your day so that you have control and freedom to be able to enjoy what you want with whom you want, because that's really what it's about. It's being able to optimize not only your life now, but also the longevity of your life so that you can be here for those generations of kids and grandkids and do things with them that you can and want to, because you're not being held back by any sort of physical limitation.
Nice. Wow, that was a lot there. A lot of good information. I mean, I guess to circle back around, like to hit first, you're right. It's all about finding the time. It's like we all have the time. It's like, do you want to find it, and how serious are you about this? You know, when I was still in law enforcement for a little while, I had an hour for lunch every day. And instead of going out to eat every single day, which is what I used to do, I wanted to take my health seriously. And so instead of going out to lunch to eat every day, I would bring my lunch and I would take my lunch hour and I would go upstairs to the gym and work out. So you're right. I mean, it's those small little sacrifices that you do depending on how serious you are about wanting to reach your goals. That's just, my own personal example. But and then you open up another huge door about the foods that we eat, which can just go down rabbit holes, because it's not just the foods that we eat, but it's all about the stuff that's being done to our foods, everything that's
Yep.
added to it, right? And so there's a whole stuff to
Yep.
unpack there. But those are really great points, I think, to get people started, at least thinking about, what do I want to do or how I want to get this started. I think those are really good pointers for somebody that's just kind of on that line, or like, I need to do this, but I don't know where to start. And speaking of where do I start, people that are looking to get help, people that want to get better in their health, their fitness, improve their life,
Yeah.
how do they reach out to you? Like, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah. Well, before I share that, because I want to give one more tip to help them.
Yeah, sure.
When you're looking at your next meal, I think the trick for you to start creating and transitioning into this healthier lifestyle is, when you look down at your food, you want approximately a quarter of your plate to be a nice protein source. You want another quarter of your plate to be like a healthier, what we call a smart carb, right? Because a donut or a cookie is going to be metabolized very differently
Yeah.
than like your rice or your sweet potato or your mashed potato or something like that. And then the other half of your plate are going to be your fruits and veggies, whether that's a salad or seasonal veggies that you grow in your own yard, or you go out in a restaurant and get it, stuff like that. And then like your fats are usually just a sliver of that plate. Or if you were to use your hand, it's roughly the size of your thumb. It's usually 1-2 tablespoons would be your fat source. And I like personally using your hand, because depending where you live in the country, the plate size in Connecticut could be very different than down south.
You're
But
not
if you're
kidding.
using your
Yeah.
hand, like your palm is roughly the size of the amount of protein that you would want to have, which if you were to kind of marry that against a plate would guesstimate around a quarter of your plate. And then if you close your palm, that's going to be roughly the size of the carbs that you want to eat. It's a fist size. And then if you double your fists and you put them down, that'll be roughly the size of your veggies and your fruit. And without getting into the reasons why behind all of that, take my word for it right now. But if you start planning your meals like that, you're going to start to see, even without weighing a thing, without putting anything into an app, that's going to allow you to kind of gauge portion control. Because even if you're eating good foods, which I see too, if you're not eating it in the right proportions, then you're not going to see that change in body composition that a lot of people are after. So I hope that was helpful, because I feel like that would really be something that people could take action on right away. And then in terms of helping you guys, I love the US Navy. I mean, I will say my diehard feel is the US Navy, just because of my background. And when I was a little girl, my parents used to always take me to the Army Navy football game, which was arguably one of my favorite childhood memories every single December, which if you've never been to an Army Navy football game, like, you need to go. But with that being said, I love to give, and I feel like my mission on this earth is to serve people. And I would love for everyone who's listening, who's like even remotely interested, to give you a free survey that would be all about your lifestyle, your eating habits, your sleeping habits, your stress, your exercise, and completely free. I'll send it over. It takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes most. And then I'll send you kind of like, hey, this is exactly what I would recommend that you do to start to hit blank goal that you have for yourself. And in that way, you at least have some sort of push in the right direction. And if you're like, hey, like, Anne's pretty cool and like I would prefer to work with her, amazing. If not, though, I'm giving you the resources that you're now able to get out of your own way and at least push that train in the right direction. So, Mike, is it okay if I send that survey to you? And then that way, if anyone is interested, I would be more than happy to take a look at your unique situation. I'm talking physical limitations, dietary restrictions. What's really cool now is my husband, as I mentioned, transitioned into healthcare. So if there is any clients that come to me with major injuries, whether it's from a traumatic experience, whether you served or just in general, I have him take a look at all of my client programming to make sure it aligns with what we should be doing to help from a rehab perspective too. So it's kind of cool. You get like two sets of people putting together your programming.
Very good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely send that over to me. you have a Facebook group and you have emails and all that stuff. How should somebody find your group, or how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so Active with Ann is the name of my company. So if you were to type in Active with Ann or the Fit Blonde LLC, either one of those should pop up on Facebook. If not, you can always try my name. It's Ann Svogun, Svogun on Instagram. That's probably where, between my Facebook group, I am most active. I'm in my Facebook group every day doing some sort of value add, whether it's a guide or a live training. I'll bring in experts in our field completely free. So that might be a really nice place for you to start, in addition to the survey, if you're interested in learning more about your own body and how you can optimize it.
Yeah, for sure. And what we'll do is we'll just put the link right here at the bottom of the screen so people can go directly to that. So awesome.
Cool.
All right, Ann. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of the day and providing us with some really great information, especially, the tips that you've given us to try to incorporate more health and fitness into our lives, which we all need to do, including myself. But we greatly appreciate you on. For anybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye. Thank you.